Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Community Trail Running Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Lee. Thank you for joining me once again. So many podcasts out there, and I so appreciate you spending a little bit of your time with me. Today we are talking to Ian Jackson about the Sunshine Coast Trail here in British Columbia. 180 kilometers long, 16 huts, all completely free to stay at. And of course, 180 kilometers being 100 miles, many of you out there thinking, I don't need a hut. We'll talk about both of those options, and it's really good. I can't wait to share it. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping first. First bit of that, the registration for the Shuffle, which is on the Sunshine Coast Trail, is opening in the new year. Watch out for that. It's linked in the podcast notes. And the only other bit, thank you all for liking and subscribing in the past week. I noticed a bit of a difference there. There were a few more likes and subscriptions, so I'm doing it again. Please like, subscribe, share anything you can. I really appreciate it. It helps the entire process. But enough about that. Today, we're talking Sunshine Coast Trail with Ian. Let's go. Today's guest is Ian Jackson. We're chatting all about the Sunshine Coast Trail. Ian currently calls Powell River, British Columbia home. He loves to trail run and was the first recorded runner to complete the Sunshine Coast Trail in one go, all the way back in 2004. There have been 11 completed attempts since then, and I'm excited to hear all about the trails and some stories from over the years. Ian, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here, Adam.
Really appreciate it. A quick side story for everyone. I send the questions to everyone a day or so ahead so they can gather their thoughts. Ian was the first person to write his responses, so I'm even more excited for this interview because the first couple of answers are fantastic. The first question is easiest. Tell us about the Sunshine Coast Trail and what drew you to it, Ian.
So great question, Adam. This project, as I'll call it, started when four friends, all of whom were accomplished runners, ultra runners and triathletes, got together to drink beer and watch the Tour de France highlights one summer evening a while back. So we'd all run 100-milers, but we wanted a challenge of about 100 miles that was fresh, challenging, didn't have a lottery, wouldn't cost an arm and a leg, and we could do together. So we bounced around some ideas, and the Sunshine Coast Trail came up. So the trail is about 100 miles long, wasn't too far from Vancouver, where we all lived. Mm-hmm. To our knowledge, nobody had ever run it before. One of my buddies even had a guidebook to the trail, so I got the guidebook from him and called the guidebook's author, a fellow by the name of Eagle Waltz. And I told him we'd like to run the trail in 2 days. He said, that's impossible. So right there and then, we decided we'd prove Eagle wrong and we'd be the first runners to bag the trail.
Well, that was the plan. So tell us about the experience of running the trail in one go and being the first to do it on the Sunshine Coast Trail.
Okay, so my answer is not exactly what you're thinking. It actually took us 2 tries. So the first year, after running about 100 kilometers or so, we arrived at a dirt road and turned right, exactly as Eagle's book instructed. The problem was a logging company had built a road that the author wasn't aware of. Mm-hmm. So we ended up getting horribly lost, and all 4 of us came close to dying of exposure that night. My buddies and I made a pledge there and then after we kind of were saved, we got back to safety and so on. And we made a pledge there and then that we'd come back the next year and knock off the whole 180 kilometers in one push. The locals who did help us out, even though they took us for a bunch of dumbass city boys, were impressed with our efforts, and I think they felt a bit guilty because their guidebook almost got us killed. So they agreed to help us out if we did attempt it again. So fast forward a year later, 2004, as you pointed out, we came back for another try. This time we had serious local intel. We had friends and family with aid at intervals of about 20 and 30K, and we had a film crew. So, as with the previous year, this was a team effort. We all wanted to finish, and we wanted to finish holding hands with an FKT and a world record. And as things go, only one of us actually made the whole 180K. That person was me, but I couldn't have done it without my three teammates. So I'd like to say that all four of us were the first baggers of the Sunshine Coast Trail.
It obviously made a huge difference to have a whole crew with you the second year, and to know that maybe you need to go the other way at that logging road. I know in your message you had sent back to me, you wanted to shout out the Powell River Parks and Wilderness Society. I think we should go there right away because they're responsible for a lot of this trail. So please tell us about them.
Sure. The Powell Rivers Parks and Wilderness Society, known as PRPAWS, is a volunteer-run society. These folks built the trail and have maintained it for 30 years. They've never given up the good fight to protect the few remaining stands of old growth in the area. PRPAWS has built 16 huts along the 180K Sunshine Coast Trail route. These huts are free to use for anybody.
Which is so cool.
Very cool. World-class cool. And for 27 years, this might be of interest to your listeners. For the past 27 years, PRPAWS has hosted the Marathon Shuffle, which is a 29K run hike in late April along a section of the trail. And again, the cost to participate is free.
Getting back to the trail, which PRPAWS has so much influence on, obviously, you've got a website with all the information for everyone to check out. Part of that tells us some times. Nicola Gildersleeve, and forgive me if I've mistaken her name, I hope you'll correct me, but she's the women's record holder all the way back in 2014. You let me know she's the only woman to have finished as well. That was 33 hours and 50 minutes. And right now the men's record holder is Nick Duff. He set his time in 2020, and it's 27 hours 20 minutes. Are you aware of anyone determined to take a crack at the FKTs?
So you're correct. Nicola is still the only woman to have run the Sunshine Coast Trail, and Nick holds the FKT for the man. I'd like to add that Oscar Michalak from Squamish is the only person to have run the Sunshine Coast Trail unsupported. And Alston Miller from Powell River is the only person to have run it more than twice, and he's done it 3 times.
Just can't get enough.
Yeah, he'll do it again this year. And he's also really enthusiastic a pacer and crew member for other people who have attempted the trail. So to answer your question, though, I'm aware of several people who've said they're going to go for the FKT this year, so 2023. But until they've done it, though, it's all talk.
Talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap.
How about you? Do you have any cheap talk for us? Are you planning on giving it a go again?
Oh, I've got lots of cheap talk, but no, I don't have any plans at all to run the whole thing ever again. It took me 2 tries, it almost killed me, but I accomplished my goal of being the first to run the whole enchilada nonstop. One and done for me, my friend. But looking towards the future, I see my role as more of a coach or mentor to those folks who follow.
Obviously, you don't have to run the whole thing at once. The cabins are really cool. They're free, as you said. They make it easy to be able to take your time out there. And the fact that you're supposed to travel north to south, which means you need to arrange travel to get to the most northern point. All of these are good reasons to kind of take your time. How about for you? Is there a section of the trail that you really like that stands out above the others?
Each section of the trail, and I'll call the sections the parts of the trail between the cabins. So each of these sections have unique characteristics. So some sections are on the ocean, some are on mountaintops, some sections are on mossy green tunnels where old logging roads passed over 100 years ago. Some sections follow rushing rivers. It's really hard to pick one section as my favorite. But I guess if you insist, I'd say the marathon shuffle route. This isn't just because I participated in the shuffle 7 times and won the event a couple of times, but also because it's a beautiful and very accessible section. This this 29K section starts not far from the seaside village of Lund and ends at the Shingle Mill pub in the city of Powell River. The good thing about that particular section is it's accessible to anyone. You don't have to drive dirt roads. The PRPAWS folks shuffleize that section of the trail. Shuffleize is a verb that was invented by the PRPAWS folks to describe the process of making sure it's just as clean and easy to hike and well marked as downtown Stanley Park.
Ian, I could listen to you chat about this trail all day. It's clear that you're passionate about it, but tell the people where they can learn more about the trail, running it, staying in the huts, all the good stuff, and about how they can reach out to you if they want to take a crack at running this thing.
Sure. So if any of your listeners are curious about the Sunshine Coast Trail, I'd recommend they start doing the research on the Sunshine Coast Trail website, just as it sounds, www.sunshinecoasttrail.com. The website offers tons of information about the trail, the flora, the fauna, the huts, and lots of other useful data. And I should point out that if you notice something that's missing or incorrect on the website, let me know with an email on the contact form, as I recently took on the role of the webmaster. There's also a Facebook page, sunshinecoasttrail.com. Look for the one that says Sunshine Coast Trail Official. That's the one that's managed by PRPAWS. So I recommend folks use this particular resource, the Facebook page, to ask their questions, as it has a large following of runners and hikers and is best for the kind of up-to-date feedback on trail conditions that people need to plan. I highly recommend that anyone who plans to use the trail, either for running or hiking, get a copy of Eagle Waltz's trail guide. The actual title is the Sunshine Coast Trail Guidebook. A new release came out last year, so that's 2021. The guidebook costs about $25, and you can buy it from the Sunshine Coast web page. You can also get it at the tourism office in Powell River, but that's only kind of for last minute stuff. For your listeners who are runners and are looking for a bit of stoke to get them thinking about running the trail, they could check out Excess Energy. Excess Energy is a 45-minute documentary movie about the run my buddies and I did back in 2004. It's free, and you can find a link to the movie and a list of everyone who has run the trail nonstop since then under running resources on the Sunshine Coast Trail website. So as a bit of a parting challenge, I'll go on record as saying that the Sunshine Coast Trail is now far, far better marked and better maintained than it was 20 years ago when I ran it. Running it now is a piece of cake in comparison. So with all respect to Nicola, who I consider a very good friend, the woman's FKT is soft. So ladies, get your butts out on the trail this summer and earn yourself an FKT. And guys, there's always room for improvement too on Nick Duff's FKT. I encourage you to go for it as well. And if any of you are serious about giving it a go and like to discuss, use the Contact Us form on the Sunshine Coast Trail website to find me.
Ian will give you all the right turns, I promise. Huge thank you to Ian Jackson. Huge thank you to everyone listening. Shout out to race volunteers everywhere and volunteers like those at PRPAWS. This is Community Trail Running, and until next time, I'm your host, Adam Lee.